All right. Episode 2. Lion L. Johnson.
And the Dark
and
Angels.
the Dark Angels. The most heretical non-heretics to never heretic ever.
That sounds like heresy.
Asmodai, make him repent.
Yes.
Okay, so, in order to start at the beginning, we need to first talk about the legions themselves. 20 legions at the beginning. We talked about this last week. The Emperor made 20 primarchs and 20 legions from the primarchs gene seed. Now, the first of these, the first legion, being the Dark Angels, or as they were originally known as, the First, were an experimental template for the other legions. It was broken up into 6 different hosts, which was called the Hexagrammaton for some reason. And these hosts being the Dreadwing, the Stormwing, the Ravenwing, the Ironwing, the Firewing, and the Deathwing.
Do we want to overview what each of those were?
Yeah, might as well.
Just
Okay.
Brief. Hold on.
So,
No, go ahead.
the Dreadwing were basically the heavy hitters of the Legion.
Yeah.
This was the armored assault. They used the scary weapons, like vortex weapons, whatever the fuck that is. There's a scene in one of the Dark Angels books about the Horus Heresy, where the Dreadwing all assembles on a cliffside, and they're fighting Sons of Horus, I think, who are trying to take a position they're holding.
Yeah.
And they literally just start chanting "We are death, we have come. We are death, we have come." And then they orbital strike the position with a vortex cannon, and it shatters reality. It is scary shit, man.
That's so cool.
Yeah, and they also use phosphex, which is space napalm, I'm pretty sure. And then they're scary motherfuckers, and they don't have a rigid hierarchy of command. They elect their own representative to lead them. It's called a voted lieutenant.
Huh.
And they take control of the formation at that time.
Huh.
Yeah, interesting shit. And then the Stormwing would basically be what we would refer to as if you look at American history, the Marines, where they started ship to ship combat.
Yeah.
The Stormwing literally just stormed shit.
Yeah.
Pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah.
They were made up of general breacher squads with big ass riot shields and shit.
Yeah.
The Ravenwing,
Fast.
they were pretty much just fast. They were like the White Scars, but white people.
They get to have jet bikes.
They got jet bikes. They were hit and run tactics. They scouted.
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
Yeah.
The Iron Wing was your heavy armor support, so this would be your huge ass Land Riders, your Dreadnoughts, and they were more of a shock and awe type unit.
Yeah.
Now, interestingly enough, we don't know what the Fire Wing is. There is no recorded, that I know of, mention of what the Fire Wing does. But considering their name, Firewing, I would assume heavy flamers and shit.
Apparently,
I've been wrong before.
According to 1D4chan, I believe they have their own separate page. The Firewing has their own separate page. The Firewing.
Oh, really?
The Firewing is, quote unquote, the hidden blade of the Legion, who does spies. They utilize spies and assassins.
Oh,
so they're basically the Alpha Legion.
That makes a lot of sense. The name needs adjusting.
Yeah.
Because Firewing isn't really...
Yeah. Vastael, known members Vastael and Griffane.
Griffin. Yeah, Griffane. He's, they talked about him in one of the books.
Okay.
Where Luther is, subterfuging, the Legion.
Yeah.
And, starting to split them up.
Okay.
From the inside. We'll talk about that later.
Okay.
But, yeah.
So the
they do mention him.
The Firewing is the Black Ops section of the Dark Angels, I suppose you could say.
Interesting. That is very interesting. I never would have guessed that by the name.
Yeah, Firewing.
Very
that's
glad
the
you said this.
the Shadow Wing would be Black Opsy, but I guess that's a secret diversionary tactic.
Yeah. It's like SEAL Team 6.
Yeah.
There was only one team. Why'd you name them number 6?
There's 5 other SEAL teams.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
exactly. They made the Russians think there was more than one. And then there was the Deathwing, which if you've played the game Space Hulk Deathwing, which me and Nicias have recently purchased and have recently dived into.
Yes.
Oh, what a fun and glorious exposition of Warhammer 40,000 that is. The Deathwing were the Legion elites. They were all in Terminator armor, and they were also privileged to all the secrets of the Inner Circle.
They get to have all the cool stuff.
They had all the cool stuff and all the fun toys.
Yes.
So basically, the Legion was when you were a neophyte of the Legion, you were assigned to one of these wings, and you would serve that wing. And I don't think you would ever step outside of that wing, except if you were promoted to the Death Wing.
Yeah.
Because the Death Wing is like literally the most important wing.
Yeah.
Because not only because of the fact that they were the Legion elites, but because of the closeness to the chapters, to the Legion secrets that it would carry.
Yeah. Is there not like a process by which they are sorted into each legion, or is there
each of the wings?
Yeah.
I think it's more of a, if you're good at this kind of thing, you do this. Like you would know whether or not you were going to be put into a one of these wings or not.
Yeah, because it's like I think based on 1D4chan and Lexicanum, that Dark Angels being part of certain wings, it's based on like people observing them as neophytes, I suppose.
Right.
And so that's how they get assigned. I assume that's like, oh, this guy really, 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 really likes to crush the enemies of the Emperor in a loud, angry, dramatic way. Let's put him in fucking I forgot the name already. Let's put him in
Dreadwing.
Let's put him in Dreadwing. They like to destroy the enemy in terrifying ways. This guy is really good at using his jet bike. Let's put him in Stormwing, so on and so forth.
Right. Yeah. There was actually on one of the websites, might have been Lexicanum, talking about the Raven Wing and how knights from Caliban were good fits in the Raven Wing because they were so used to riding on horseback,
right?
That it was just an extension of the horseback scouting and hit and run attacks, and it was a good fit for a lot of the Caliban-born members of the Legion.
Wait, you mean to tell me that moving on to Lionel Johnson, I'll bring up this question again later after we talk a little bit about Caliban and Lionel Johnson.
Gotcha. Okay, so the interesting segue.
Yes.
Now we're on to the Primarch himself, Lionel Johnson. He landed on Caliban after being thrown into the warp by the gods of chaos. Caliban was a death world, which, if you could imagine what that's like, it's not pleasant. And this world was essentially just space feudalism, where knights using kind of basic power armor would form orders of knights, and these knight houses, generally nobles, hunted the Calibanite monsters, the great beasts they were called, that frequently murdered all the peasants. One of the most important knight orders at the time of Johnson's landing was called the Order. Fun name. The order was led by a man called Luther. Luther was like a stoic, stout knight who, it was a man you wouldn't mind following.
Yeah.
Luther found a baby Primarch in the woods and named him Lionel Johnson, which means the Lion, son of the forest. We will just call him the Lion because L. Johnson is a little bit of a mouthful. The Order, now with a growing Primarch in their arsenal, launched total war against the Great Beasts as well as the other Knight Orders on Caliban. They basically hunted all the other Knight Orders down and either asked them to join them or murdered them to the man. Which was fun for them, I guess.
I mean, when giant space manticores have been eating your planet, or the people of your planet, for generations, and suddenly you find a baby that kills one of them with its bare hands as a baby, you just won.
Yeah.
You've won.
Pretty much.
This is your child. You have won. You will raise him, and you will teach him to crush all of your enemies, because you have won. And so they did. They won.
One of the other significant knight houses, called the Knight Orders. I believe they were called the the Knights of Lupus. They were basically like the last remnant of the other knight orders. And when Johnson asked them to surrender, they completely disagreed with his positioning, with his belief that they need to hunt down all the remaining beasts, the great beasts of Caliban, because they thought if the beasts were all destroyed, then the social order and the physical order of Caliban would be thrown over its head, and only fucking bad shit was gonna happen after that. Anyway, they all died.
Okay, yes.
And Johnson continued his jihad against the great beasts of Caliban.
I'm looking at...
And he killed...
all of them.
Yes.
I'm looking at...
Weren't they glorious?
I'm looking at pictures of them. There's like one picture of them. It looks like a chaos beast with a mane.
Yeah, they're basically chaos spawn.
Oh. Huh.
Like, actually, because the heart of Caliban's like corrupted. It's weird. And there's this whole plot line about how the beasts of Caliban... This is why I mentioned the Knights of Lupus. Okay. Because the beasts of Caliban actually kept like the chaos sealed away.
What?
Almost.
Huh.
It's really weird, and I don't even remember how they describe it in the book. But essentially, the Knights of Lupus were correct. Destroying the beasts would not be good for Caliban. Huh. Anyway, Lion kills all the beasts. And some fucky shit happens after that. So I guess they had a point. Not long after, Lion was declared basically the ruler of the planet of Caliban. Mm-hmm. And not like... I don't think they used the word king. I think they had some whack-ass title. Like they called him Supreme Commander of the Order or some shit.
King.
Yeah, whatever. He was king of Caliban.
He was king of Caliban, by default.
By default.
The military leader of a country is the king.
Yeah. Not long after, the Emperor would arrive with giant lions, Gene Sons, the Dark Angels. Or I think they were called the First.
Yeah.
The First Legion, originally, before they were renamed to the Dark Angels.
I don't think any of them really got, except for maybe the Emperor's children, I don't think any of them got their names before they found their primarchs.
A couple of them did. The Iron Warriors were called the Iron Warriors.
Huh.
The White Scars might have been called the White Scars?
Well,
I don't...
We'll make it... I'm making a tally now of where they weren't really called their names. They weren't given the name we know them as now. They operated under just the number of their legion.
Different. Right, okay. Fair enough. So, but yeah, like a lot of them got renamed. Like the fucking Warhounds got renamed as the World Eaters. Yeah. The Stormwalkers, I think they were called, got renamed into the Iron Hands.
Huh.
Yeah, like, okay, like the Imperial Heralds turned into the Word Bearers.
Yes.
How funny that would be.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. We are not a religion. Proceeds to name his army the World Bearer, the Imperial Heralds.
Yeah, exactly. Because they were heralding the Imperial truth.
Yes.
The Imperial truth that I am not a god, despite the fact that I look like a god. Moving on. The Emperor brought with him members of the Mechanicus, and the Mechanicus brought with them massive fucking terraforming machines to basically make Caliban a not death world anymore.
Huh.
And that's... And members of the Lion's Orders, the Lion's Order, the Order, capital T, capital O, would attempt to become Astartes, but obviously only pure-gened, capable physical specimens could be turned into Space Marines.
Huh.
Among the ones that were not given the status of Space Marine, I believe Luther was among them. His adopted dad, because he was too old. That's a similar thing with like Lorgar's adopted dad, Corferon. Was too old and weak to become a Space Marine, so he was just given like body enhancements and like armor, like.
So he wasn't like Corferon wasn't like a Space Marine proper.
Right. He was just an old man who was given like life and extending and augments and power armor.
Yeah.
I think Corferon had Terminator armor for some fucking reason. Yeah. He was weird.
Yeah.
I hate Corferon with a burning passion. Moving on. After the Emperor came with the Dark Angels, Lion was reunited with the Suns, and they would join the Great Crusade. And during this crusade, they would start the funniest feud I think I've ever read about between the Space Wolves. They literally competed to be the best. And Lehman and the Lion punched each other fucking silly because of this at a point. And there's a point where every time a Dark Angel saw a Space Wolf, they would have an honor duel to decide who is better. There's a point in one of the Horus Heresy books where they're all on Ultramar, and there's a small company of Space Wolves that are on Ultramar, and the Primarch of Lionel Johnson is also on Ultramar, and the Space Wolf sees him, basically spits on his feet, and says, "Where's your champion? I want to fight your champion to prove whose legion is better." And the Lion says, "I'm my champion," and proceeds to bitch slap the Space Wolf down a flight of stairs. Such a good part in that book.
That is awesome.
Yeah, it's a good, well written feud, I would say.
I feel like any moment that shows like the humanity of the Space Marines is a good moment, but that's just hilarious.
Yeah, it's very, very well written.
Where's your big fighter? I'm gonna fight the most powerful person in your stupid legion. I am the Primarch of this legion. And then the other Space Wolves just kind of stand there just like, I'm not doing it. Nope.
Yeah, it's kind of exactly how that went, too. So the Dark Angels performed very honorably during the Great Crusade,
yes.
Led by their Primarch, and made good progress through the galaxy.
Yes.
All the while, Luther, back on Caliban, was kind of like, not that happy. Well, he wasn't on Caliban the whole time. There was basically a point where the Lion and Luther got into a disagreement.
Right.
And the Lion sent Luther back home to, like, raise more troops. To, like, oversee the production of more Astartes for the Great Crusade.
Yeah.
And Luther's interpreted that as a punishment. And he would basically brood on Caliban for the next foreseeable years as the Great Crusade went on, and the Lion won all this glory, and Luther was just kind of twiddling his thumbs on Caliban, and the resentment was beginning to kind of seep in, and you could see the tears beginning to form, but more on that later.
Yeah.
The Emperor eventually would leave his sons, as we talked about last week, to work on his Webway project, his super secret Webway project, and left Horus Lupercal as War Master. Now, the Lion thought he should be the War Master because he has blonde hair and big muscles, and he was the first.
While Horus
was number one.
Well, Horus
was a quote-unquote
no
bald cunt. To quote the great Major Kill YouTuber. The Lion, on a serious note, the Lion was pretty much the embodiment of the Emperor's pride.
Right.
We talked about how each of the Primarchs had an extension of the Emperor's personality. The Lion, if anything, was his pride, his ferocity.
His
I wouldn't say hubris.
Ego.
Yes. I wouldn't say it's beyond hubris, but it's definitely prideful, and you could see how that begins to tear his legion apart as well. So, moving on to the Horus Heresy. So Horus knew that the Lion was going to be a problem no matter where he was, because he was such a formidable fighter, he was a formidable leader, general, commander, and he knew if the Dark Angels were around, especially on like Istvan, which we didn't talk about, but we will.
We'll get to there.
Then his plans would basically begin to unfurl because it was such a potent enemy to have. So Horus sent the First Legion way to the fringes of the galaxy to subdue some small fucking piss poor enemy that he began to hype up for the Lion to go.
Yeah.
So this kept the First Legion out of the loop. It kept them away from all the fuckery that was going to go down.
Yeah.
Eventually, the Horus Heresy would happen, and the Night Lords would find and bully the... No, first it was the Death Guard, I believe. And Typhus led a splinter fleet to attack the First Legion. Typhus being the first captain, I believe, of the Death Guard. Or Typhon, I think he was called. It gets so confusing when they change their names. We'll get there of one day. So they fought. The heresy was revealed to Johnson, and he began to basically fight back, slowly but surely.
Yeah, he fought the Death Guard and the Night Lord. He fought the Death Guard and the Night Lords.
He fought the Death Guard and the Night Lords.
Yeah.
Eventually, he would fight the Night Lords in what was called the Thramis Crusade,
right,
in which he counterattacked, and the Night Lords would conduct a series of like hit and runs on the First Legion as they engaged, and this would draw on for a couple months, and obviously resentment began to grow between the two legions.
He also briefly fought the Iron Hands. Wait, no, it was. I'm reading the thing. He went to go stop. He went to go intervene between the Death Guard and the Iron Hands.
Oh, that might have been what I was talking about.
Oh, okay.
With the Splinter Fleet.
Right.
While all this was happening, severe disillusionment began in the Legion, especially between the Caliban-born legionnaires and those born from Terra, or along the way. Luther began to consolidate more and more power on Caliban and convince other members from Caliban to follow him instead of the Lion, because the Lion was, he's all the way out there, and he doesn't know what our problems are anymore. He's not even from Caliban. And this basically cultivated into a civil war between the Legion.
Yeah.
And there's a good part in the book when the Civil War basically happens, and it follows the point of view of the chief librarian of the Dark Angels. Librarians being the Space Marines with a connection to the warp with psychic powers, basically. And the chief librarian was basically like Luther's right hand. But while the whole time that Luther was doing this, there was a man whispering over his shoulder, telling him to do things, telling him what books to read, and that man was none other. Can you guess what the man I'm about to tell you is?
Lorgar.
No, even more ambiguous and non-able to pin down. No! It was none other than Cypher.
Who? Oh!
Exactly.
Oh!
Who is Cypher?
Hold on. I feel like I made a mistake. Yes. One moment. Continue.
So Cypher was basically like, I forget the official position he had, but he was basically like the commander's right hand. And he more or less convinced Luther to begin this civil war. Maybe. Okay. We don't know. Because nothing he does is ever, like, solidified.
I am looking at his I have been making the mistake of reading off of 1D4chan and the 40k wiki and not Lexicanon for this.
Yes,
that's not a good idea. Cypher is a mysterious feature associated with the Dark Angels, as in he's wearing Dark Angel's armor, he's wielding a Dark Angel sword, but he's also super duper sus because he's fought alongside Chaos Terminators and Demon Princes, and apparently his whole deal, from what I'm looking at, is just he's just super duper edgy and contrarian.
Yes.
He has his own plan, and everything else is just a means to the end of that plan.
Yep.
Cypher was president. Blah, 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 blah. He killed some guy who knew too much. He killed a bunch of people who knew too much under the Dark Angels, and being potentially this, he's a one. From what I'm seeing, he's just like Alfarius if Alfarius didn't just go all the way to chaos.
Yeah,
it's kind of like.
But
yes,
Cypher also helped Gilliman get back to Terra. During the on his like when he was woken up from the stasis.
Yes.
Like in modern 41st millennium.
Yeah.
It's like, and he made a deal with Gilliman where, like,
my goals
if I
are
do
beyond
this
your
for you, I
understanding.
want some alone time with the Emperor. He is super fucking ambiguous, and, like, nobody knows. I don't even think GW knows what's going on with him.
It's like, so what is this? So what is his motivations? What is his goal? Whose side is he on? We're still working on that.
Yeah, exactly.
What's his purpose? He's edgy.
He's edgy.
He's just super duper edgy. Yes, just look at him. He just screams like, I am all the morally ambiguous edgelords of the yore. I mean, look at this dude, like, with the hood, and, like, the bolter and the plasma rifle and the plasma gun. Just straight up this dude is just straight up an Assassin's Creed character.
Kinda, yeah.
He's
like he's basically like an Alpha Legionnaire.
Yes.
But, like, if an Alpha Legionnaire was, like, a Dark Angel.
Yes.
Maybe he is an Alpha Legionnaire. We don't know.
Maybe maybe Cypher was Alfarius all along.
Maybe Cypher was Alfarius. Maybe I'm Alfarius.
Schrodinger's Alfarius, my friend. One day
I am and not Alfarius at the same time.
Oh, I was about to say, one day we're going to have to explain that.
Yeah,
maybe. The Alpha Legion episode.
Anyway.
Yeah, we spend the Alpha Legion episode doing that.
Moving on. So we kick off to the Unremembered Empire. Now, you might ask, what's the Unremembered Empire? I can't remember it. Well, that's the point. The Unremembered Empire was basically, during the Great Crusade, during the Horus Heresy, the Word Bearers attacked Ultramar because fuck those blue baby Smurfs.
Yes.
Essentially was their reasoning. They created a giant warp storm that basically sectioned off the realm of Ultramar, which was the Ultramarines' like pocket empire, and they made it legitimately into a pocket empire. And the warp storm cut off all communication, all travel to and within Ultramar. But first, the Dark Angels, the Blood Angels, and the Ultramarines were all stuck inside this giant warp storm. And this was amazing and brilliant tactics by the Word Bearers, and by Horus, I guess, was really pulling the strings the whole time. Or not, maybe, I don't know. And because this essentially cut off 3 entire legions from the rest of the Horus Heresy.
Yeah.
So the Loyalists were now fighting, almost half strength. Less than half strength, because this fan knocked out 3 more legions.
Yeah.
So they were really on the upper hand there. Brilliant tactics. During this warp storm, however, these 3 legions basically formed their own Imperium. Imperium Secundus. Yes.
Yep.
And now the interesting part is they made an emperor to rule this Imperium. Can you guess who that emperor was?
Robot Gorillaman.
It was actually Sanguinius.
Of course.
Sanguinius became the new emperor, and they addressed him as emperor. Basically,
man.
Gilliman became like the head administrator, and Johnson became basically the war master.
Yeah. So no, continue.
No, go ahead.
So essentially, when they made Imperial Secundus, they just made the empire that they believed they deserved.
They made the empire they believed they needed.
Oh.
Because it formed the groundworks for, like, hope to be alive.
Huh.
Because if not, like, fuck it, I'll just kill myself. Like, there's no reason to live if literally you just see a warp storm every time you look up. Like, I'd rather chew glass than see a warp storm. and not be able to eat, see, or talk to other people on other planets.
Good point.
So during this all, the Night Lords, and specifically Conrad Kurz, was kind of just fucking with everybody on Ultramar,
Right.
on Macragge specifically.
Yes.
He was just kind of there for some reason. Well, basically what happened was, at the end of the Thramis Crusade, the Line captured Conrad Kurz on his ship, on the Dark Angel's flagship.
Yes.
And they basically hunted each other in the depths of this ship for months while they were traversing this warp storm to get to Macragge.
Yes.
And it was it's fucking nonsense. Like, they were just literally running around the ship like a bunch of toddlers trying to stab each other to death.
Just
so
both do I'm just imagining a mission it's just like all those Predator missions in Batman Arkham Asylum, except it's just Batman.
Yes.
Everybody's Batman.
Right. Everybody's Batman. So Conrad Kurz basically launched a terrorist campaign against Macragge and would blow shit up daily, for no reason. Just to annoy. And it also, he also made it his way into, the new Imperial Palace and just talked to Sanguinius at one point.
Yeah.
He was just kind of chatting with him. And they were talking about their shared precognition abilities. Yeah, exactly. And Sanguinius was like, bro, can you fucking knock this shit off? Just chill out and we'll talk to you. It's all good, man. And Kurz was screeching in the corner, space Batman murder. I don't know. I wasn't there.
Which Sanguinius, naturally, being the perfect character, interpreted to mean everything is set. My visions are 100% true. Everything is set in stone. I'm doing what I'm doing because it's going to happen. There's no way around it. And Sanguinius was like, no, we can change fate. And so they went on this whole anime conversation. And in the end, they collectively decided to not do that. And also,
Sanguinius... Kurz also...
Yeah, no, continue.
Kurz kind of blew up the throne.
Yes.
The throne room.
Well, yes.
And, almost killed Raldoron, who is, one of the better Blood Angels. And anyway, this is
for their episodes.
For another time. Yeah. So, basically, there was a point in time where they're like, fuck it, let's just go through the warp storm. And they all decided collectively, all three of them, decided to just kind of mad dash, because they didn't know what was happening on Terra. They didn't know what was happening. If the siege was over, if the Emperor was already dead. They had no idea. So they just kind of yeet themselves into this warp storm. And there's this massive battle in which basically the Ultramarines and the Dark Angels hold off the demons of the Ruin Storm, it was called, long enough for Sanguinius and some of his Blood Angels to get through to Terra.
Yeah.
So they were holding them back.
Yeah.
Eventually, they did make it through the warp storm, and they essentially broke the siege of Terra.
Yeah.
They came in along with the Dark Angels came along with the Ultramarines of Guilliman and the Space Wolves of Russ.
Yeah. And
they began the Great Scouring, which was basically fucking the Chaos Space Marines into the Eye of Terror.
Oh.
So after this all happened, and the Dark Angels were all tired of fighting and shit, they came back home to Caliban.
And then Caliban
were immediately shot out of the sky.
Yes.
Because little did they know that the Dark Angels split, and a massive battle began for Caliban.
Right.
In which the planet was basically orbitally bombarded with the most powerful ordnance ever created.
Yes.
So the planet began to literally blow up.
Yes.
All the while, the Lion was fighting with Luther, his adopted dad, who was all hyped up on chaos magic.
Yes.
And that's why the battle lasted any amount of time, because if he wasn't warped up, the Lion would have just spit on him and it would have flew into a wall. The battle ended with Luther essentially going insane.
Yeah.
Dying, question mark? I don't know. And the Lion was basically knocked into a coma.
Yes.
Where he hasn't emerged since. Caliban blew up,
Yes.
And the biggest piece of Caliban would be later forged into the rock, which is the fortress monastery of the Dark Angels.
Yes.
So after the heresy ended, the Dark Angels, like the other remaining Loyalist legions, split into successor chapters, but the elusive hunt for the Fallen would continue, the Fallen being the Dark Angels who broke away from the main legion and turned to heresy. Question mark, maybe.
Yes, question. So...
Yes.
It's not so... At this point, based on how long it's going, would it be safe to assume that at this point they're just carrying on the legacy of the Fallen, and that they have successfully gotten enough of them to matter? Like...
Yes and no.
No?
Because it's hard to say, because we don't know how many Fallen there are.
Huh.
And they have been hunting them for 10,000 years, and they're still hunting them, so clearly something's up.
Oh. Huh.
And, like, Cypher is now kind of the leader of the Fallen? Maybe? We don't know.
Even Cypher doesn't know.
Even Cypher doesn't know. He's so confused all the time, just like me.
It's like, I have a plan. What is your plan? It's a plan. It's a thing. Yeah. Like, I can't explain it all to you. He's just standing next to a giant building-sized wall of pins and yarn. Just kind of like, just his giant crazy board. Just like, it's all there. Once I do this, everything will be good. Once I complete my plan. And they're all just kind of, they don't connect to anything.
No, they're literally just dangling pieces of yarn.
Yes. It's just kind of like, it's all there. What's the end goal here? It's all there. You just need to piece it all together.
Pretty much. So this hunt would consume their future actions, leading to some borderline heretical shit, like firing on Imperial vessels for mere suspected mention of the Fallen. They became basically consumed by this hunt.
Right.
For the Fallen, to reclaim their imagined lost honor.
Yeah.
And they would not rest until all members of the Fallen were basically murdered and interrogated first, so they could find other members of the Fallen.
Yeah.
And the ones who were privy to all this information would be the Deathwing.
Right.
The Inner Circle mentioned previous. They would lead the charge for the Fallen, because they were the only ones who knew about it.
Really?
If you were just a normal fucking line soldier of the Dark Angels, and you, like, heard the name Fallen, you would be beaten to death with basically a chaplain's croziers, because you are now a heretic.
Oh.
That whole Asmodai, make him repent
thing. That's literally the thing that happens.
Yeah, no, they would interrogate you for being a member of the Fallen.
Just like, like, what did you hear? You're just like, it's like, chapter General, I heard you talk about this Fallen thing. Fallen, you say? How do you know about the Fallen? Asmodai!
Make him repent!
So it's literally just knowing about the existence of the Fallen is heresy. Even though... Yes. So it's this thing that's consumed them to the point where even knowing its name is heresy. Unless you're the Deathwing. Because that's the only time you're important enough to know what it is. And if you know what it is for any other... Like, if like a Deathwing were to take Legionnaires, or to take like a small contingent of Space Marines to an Imperial world, and then just have them burn down villages on a Imperial planet for like a month, a standard month, and then the Space Marines ask, "What was that about?" He can't say anything, because if he tells them, that makes them heretics.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah,
it's like literally. That's why there's so many memes about the Dark Angels being heretics, because they'll burn an Imperial world to the ground if they were given information that they were fallen there. As fucking crazy as the Inquisition is,
the Dark Angels
are just as they're just as fucking crazy, because like you could whisper to an Inquisitor like, "Hey, there's heretics over here." You whisper to a fucking Dark Angel, "Hey, there's Fallen over here." They'll, like, punch through your face to punch the Fallen behind you.
Just imagining great venerated son of the Emperor. I've heard there's fallen here. What? And then he just cuts you in half from the top of your head to the bottom of your feet with his sword. He's like, fallen! And then suddenly the exterminatus is just called on the planet while he's still there, just while guys are going to repent! Just swinging his sword violently at things.
Yep, pretty much.
Just absolute pandemonium. Just, there is no logic or just pandemonium.
Yeah, it's absolute wild. It's, the Dark Angels, they're very fun. They're very interesting to observe from a distance.
Yeah.
There are a couple important Dark Angels.
Right.
Not to this day, but there are a significant amount of ones that, like, stand out.
Mm-hmm.
Of them being from, I guess you could say from the original, from the Horus Heresy.
Yeah.
You could say that Zeraphael and Nemiel, which were cousins, I believe. Zeraphael became the chief librarian and was basically part of this this rebellion.
Mm-hmm.
He's a main character in a couple of the books.
Right.
And Nemiel became the first chaplain of the Legion, and he had his head separated from his body for yelling back at the lion.
I feel like that. To be fair, that seems like something you do like once.
Yeah,
Once.
never again. Never again.
You can't question orders if your lungs don't produce the ability to make words.
Yeah, pretty much. Obviously Cypher is an important one.
Yeah. I'm going through because there are notable members. There's a list of notable members all on the Lexicanum.
Okay.
I'm just gonna start popping. I'm just gonna see if I can just throw notable fallen angels. Luther, we know.
Yeah.
Cypher, we mentioned. Marbus. Apparently, he's a demon. Apparently, he's gone full demon.
Yeah, so that is a thing with a lot of the Fallen, is that they because of the stigma that they are heretics. A lot of them just became heretics.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of like heretical shit that happens with the Fallen, and not all of them. Like Cypher obviously isn't like a demon prince or anything.
Yeah. Right. And so the Fallen just kind of become... They're not heretics. So the concept of the Fallen exists because the Dark Angels got into a brief civil war. There's no heresy involved.
Well, there was a little heresy at the end.
Yeah, but not like wholesale.
Luther kind of went full chaos shit.
Yeah, but like the average Dark Angel that was on Luther's side wasn't all blood for the blood god, skulls for the skull throne.
Right. No, definitely not.
Okay.
Definitely not.
So it was just Luther, for the most part.
For the most part.
Yeah.
Obviously, there were a couple of interesting exceptions. One of the more interesting modern 41st Millennium characters is the Master of the Deathwing, Belial. Belial?
Belial.
Sure thing. He is the Grand Master of the Deathwing. If you play the game Deathwing Space Hulk Deathwing, he is basically the one talking in your ear the whole time.
That guy.
Yeah, that guy. He leads the Deathwing, and he is basically a member of the Inner Circle.
Right. So
an interesting. Obviously, they are relatively Codex compliant.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because you'd think with their lust for vengeance and boner for murdering Fallen, that they wouldn't be as Codex compliant as they are, but they maintain Codex compliancy to a shocking degree. As well as they received Primaris reinforcements during the Indominus Crusade, which is a big thing because they saw that as like people meddling in Dark Angel affairs.
Right.
and that's not something you do. You don't meddle in Dark Angel affairs.
Okay.
So they didn't trust the Primaris reinforcements because they're like, these are outsiders. These are not Dark Angels. Eventually, though, one of the masters of the orders was injured in battle severely and was put through the Rubicon Primaris to become a Primaris Marine. Yeah. And then once that happened, they're like, all right, I guess they aren't that bad.
Question.
Yes.
Because you mentioned the Primaris Marines, isn't it implied that the Primaris Marines, when they started in the Dark Angels, they were kept under severe hypnosis?
Yeah, kind of.
Severe mind control to the point where the fact that they were Primaris was the only thing that let them know that there was anything suspicious going on at all?
Right. Yeah, well, they were so fucking concerned that that they were being fucked with by the Mechanicus and that they were trying to dig into their secrets.
Mm-hmm.
So, going back to the Horus Heresy, one of the more interesting Dark Angels was named Corswain.
Yeah.
Who was basically captain of the Ninth Order, the Ninth Company,
right.
which was he was basically one of the most important Dark Angels in the Horus Heresy.
Yes.
Because he was the right hand of Johnson the whole time.
Yeah.
He survived the entire Horus Heresy.
Right.
And he was one of the first who landed on Caliban. And he was basically the blade of the Primarch. He was one of the most formidable fighters. He was like Raldoron of the Blood Angels. Mm-hmm. He was just, you wouldn't want to fuck with Corswain. Mm-hmm. And he's written very, very well in the books. And he's like, I don't think he's the Equerry, or the Seneschal, that was his title.
Yeah, the Seneschal.
Because feudalism.
Yes. Knights, but space.
Yeah. Oh, you had a question about the Knights of Caliban.
Oh, yeah. My question about the Knights of Caliban was that, apparently, if the Knights of Caliban could become Space Marine, were allowed to become Space Marines, and why is it that what ratio of Primarchs got to have their friends from the planet become Space Marines?
So let's just go down the list.
Yeah.
Lionel Johnson had quite a few of his fellow brothers of the Order become Space Marines. Mm-hmm. Fulgrim, not so many. But definitely because there wasn't much martial struggle on Camos.
Yeah.
Perturabo had quite a few of the Tyrant's men become Space Marines. Not many.
Right.
Because he needed to replenish the stupidity of the Iron Warriors after he had a tenth of them beaten to death.
Right, yeah.
That's
its own episode.
Yeah. Who was next? White Scars. The Khan had quite a few because they were all Mongolian.
Yeah.
He ran with his Ordu. That was his men. So a dramatic few of them became Space Marines.
Yeah.
6 would be... Who's 6 Primarch?
You know what? I want to skip ahead to Angron. The point I'm trying to make here is Angron.
Oh, none. Okay,
Why?
Let's just go down the fucking list, alright? Leman Russ. Quite a few. They were all Vikings. Rogel Dorn. Quite a few. They were all cold ice people. Conrad Kurz. He didn't have any friends. Sanguinius. Kind of a lot, actually, I think. Ferrus Manus didn't have friends, he was ugly. Angron, none of them, they were all dead. Rebute Gilliman, quite a few, he was Space Caesar. Mortarion, a lot, because the only ones who were left alive on Barbarous were genetically enhanced by the poison fog.
Yes.
Magnus the Red, bunch of nerds, there was only 1,000 of them left anyway. Horus didn't have friends, he was on the planet for like 15 minutes. Lorgar, kind of a lot.
Including
more than
his adopted father.
Corferon, yes. Well, he wasn't turned into a Space Marine, but he was brought along anyway.
Yeah.
Vulcan, quite a few. They were all fucking lava fire people.
Yes.
Corax, a lot. They were all rebels. Alpharis Omegon, who the fuck knows? Because Lord knows I don't.
Brilliant. An excellent rundown.
Yes.
This has been a much quieter... I'm looking through the waveform. This has been a much quieter podcast.
Yeah, a lot less yelling this time.
Yeah. I have a question.
Yes.
We're going to be talking about chaos a lot more in the next couple of episodes, so I feel like we should just briefly explain what chaos is.
Yeah, might as well. So, the beginning.
Yes.
The very far past. There were these beings called the Old Ones.
Yes.
And the Old Ones were like space god.
Yes.
And they created all life.
Yes.
And their rivals, the Catan?
Google!
It's basically this thing that happened called the War in the Heavens.
Yes. No, it was the Catan, yeah.
Okay, good.
Hold on.
And this War in the Heavens fucked up the warp, which used to be kind of tranquil. It used to just be a mode of like emotions. It wasn't like all tumultuous and shit.
Yeah.
So once the War in the Heaven happened, and culminated by the rapid breeding of the Eldar, the expansion of them throughout the galaxy.
What timeout?
And the advent.
The Old Ones fought the Necron tier.
Yes, which were puppets of the
Puppets
Catan.
of the Catan, yeah. So semantics.
Yeah, semantics. Once humanity began to kind of around the second millennium, so no.
Yeah.
Yes. Maybe?
It's
the Dark Ages. The Dark Ages. Once the Dark Ages kind of happened, the warp began to kind of take over a mind of its own.
Yeah.
And you had these beings of power created, of raw emotion form, and these would be called the gods of chaos in time. And, you know, there's 4 basic gods of chaos. There are more, but canonicity of them is always questionable.
Yes.
The main ones being Khorne, Slaanesh, Tzeentch, and
Nurgle.
Nurgle, that's the one. Each of them being basically the most powerful being, fueled by these raw emotions.
Yes.
Khorne being the god of war, blood, anger, but also the god of honor and battle courage.
Yes.
Slaanesh being the goddess, it, he, she, it, them.
Entire gender spectrum all at once. Slaanesh.
Yeah, it's confusing. Slaanesh being the god of the being of
emotion,
excess
emotion,
hedonism, jealousy, want, desire, but also of love, of compassion, of passion. Yeah. The god Tzeentch was the god of wisdom, knowledge, but also the god of deviousness, backstabbing, cunning. And Nurgle was the god of life, of nature, but also the god of plague, of pestilence.
And rot and decay.
So, rot and decay. All of these things would basically fuel the gods of chaos.
Yes.
And once humanity sort of exploded and began to spread throughout the galaxy, their feelings and emotions just began to power the gods of chaos more.
Yes.
And with every passing year, they began to kind of sort of stick their fingers into the realm of mortals.
Yes.
And they basically manifest their power through demons.
Yes.
And when the demons are able to slip through, a lot of them can slip through the minds of psychers.
Yes.
During the old night, these minds of psychers were all taken over by demons, essentially, and they were turned into like warp portals.
Yeah.
And demons invaded through them. Mm-hmm. And these demons obviously being pure
beings,
pure beings of the fabric that makes up their god. So the demons of Khorne would be bloodlust. They're called bloodthirsters, bloodletters, blood crushers. You're getting
angry blood dudes.
Yeah, pretty much. And this would continue down the line, and these demons were only focused on, shedding blood, on preserving their fabric, their being in the fabric of reality. Yeah. Because if they ran out of that, like for example, the blood crushers, the bloodletters and all them, if they stopped killing for a significant amount of time, they would be banished back into the warp because they're no longer being fueled by
the thing.
This perpetual letting of warp energy into the
They need to do the thing that their particular god that they were created from demands of them, or they will effectively cease to exist in the mortal plane.
Right. And there have been examples of these demons challenging their gods, their respective gods. And it doesn't end well for them. Yeah. But they do it sometimes. Like, Scarbrand literally challenged Korn. And Korn bitch slapped Scarbrand into fucking, like, fantasy. Like, that's why
he bitch slapped him into
so hard
dimension, and that's why he's in the new fantasy. So he's in Total
into
War
the old
3.
world. Like, it was fucking. That's why he's in Total War Warhammer 3, because Scarbrand got punted into another fucking dimension.
That's amazing. Also,
that is an actual canonicity, but it's funny to think of it like that.
Also, because I kind of got into Warhammer at this weird time where a lot of things are getting shifted around in the canon.
Yes.
My knowledge of how Chaos worked was that Chaos demons are just straight up pieces of the Chaos God that they represent.
Yes.
So it's like the reason. So I thought that meant that they weren't necessarily like autonomous enough to start challenging.
They kind of are autonomous enough because they aren't literal pieces.
Right.
They're the fabric of.
Right.
So there exists some gray area for them to act sort of on their own.
Yeah.
But they're of a single mind of their goal to shed blood, to promote desire, to promote,
promote
pestilence,
thing that they are.
Plague. Yeah, exactly.
Yes. So the reason I wanted to bring that up is because your outline, who was the second Primarch in the outline that you wrote? Because if we're doing this in order...
Redacted was the second Primarch.
Right. Yes.
Because the second Primarch is not existing at this point in time.
You know what? Let's do that guy in episode anyway. Just an hour, some odd minutes of just raw silence.
Yeah, that's not no thanks.
So,
but the next intern Primarch would be Fulgrim.
Yeah, so
the third son.
Yeah, so I figure we need to Fulgrim and Perturabo are next, and they're both Chaos Primarchs to some extent.
This is true. So
it makes sense that
no, it's a good lead in.
So all of the Chaos Gods have their own specific armies and whatnot and their own domains. And when the Space Marines fell, they all fell and used their connection to their particular Chaos God in specific ways. Or in other cases, Perturabo's case specifically, their lack thereof of a connection to the Chaos Gods. Because...
Exactly.
Yeah, we don't need to explain how Chaos Marines work yet. That'll be for...
No, we'll get into that.
And, is there anything else Dark Angels we haven't talked about yet?
I think that wraps up Dark Angels. All that we know for now is that Lionel Johnson is still in a coma. Right. He's still on the rock. Yeah. His sons will continue to look for and interrogate the remaining fallen. Yes. Or Cypher will reveal his... Oh, fun fact about Cypher. During the fight with Luther, the Lion Sword, which is the Lion Sword.
Yes.
Really intelligent naming scheme there, Games Workshop. Was basically broken.
Yes.
And Cypher picked up the broken pieces of the Lion Sword, remade the sword, and he keeps it on his back to this day.
So that sword that he has...
That's on his back. That's the Lion's sword.
The sword.
Yes.
So that basically just puts him at the top of every interrogator chaplain shit list then, doesn't it?
Oh, 110%.
Just, like, the interrogator chaplains, they have their own big wall of crazy, and at the top of the pyramid of all of the heretics they know of is fucking Cypher.
Yes,
with
he is the goal.
And all of them, they're all different, but they all have Cypher in the same place and with written on in Sharpie, Cypher's picture has in Sharpie written on it, that fucker stole the lion's sword.
Now, did he steal it or is he holding it for the lion to come back?
No one knows.
Nobody
Not
knows.
even Cypher knows.
My head to think about.
Cypher just kind of has it.
Yeah, he does. He does have it though.
Cypher is a
But
pawn.
other than that,
Yeah. Cypher is a pawn to his own chaos god. The chaos god of shit writing.
Yeah, kind of. They just forgot about him, that's all. But that kind of wraps up the Dark Angels and Lionel Johnson. Yeah. His story will continue to be written, no doubt.
Yeah.
As there are kind of the biggest kind of theory right now in the fan base is that he's the next Primarch to come back, the next Loyalist Primarch to come back, because he is the only one that we know of that is still definitely alive. Obviously, Rogel Doran, there's a decent chance he's still alive because they never confirmed his death.
Right. Or Vulcan.
Obviously,
or Vulcan.
Vulcan never dies.
Never dies.
He's literally impossible to kill. Vulcan lives. Jagged Khan is racing dark elves in the war.
He's having
a
giant coke speed orgy on top of a giant moving Dodge Charger.
Yeah, pretty much. Corvus Corax is in the Eye of Terror, but he's not coming out of it until he murder fucks Lorgar to death.
As he should.
As he should. Yeah. Lehman Russ is in the warp.
Also,
maybe
murder fucking
we don't really
things
know.
to death. He'll be back at the wolf hour, 1:30.
He'll be back in the wolf time.
Whatever that means.
Whatever that means. He just keeps saying the word wolf and I don't understand it.
I like to make a joke about how every single Dark Angel has like cartoonishly biblical names.
Yes.
Yes,
they do.
A lot of Isles. A lot of Isles and a lot of Isles and Ziles in there.
Yeah. And like I don't know. They're kind of cool. They're literally the embodiment of feudal Europe, which is cool.
That's sick. Yeah. Cuz a lot of the 40K a lot of the Space Marines don't really lean into the whole paladins in space thing as hard as they do. They're just straight up paladins in space. All the other guys are paladins in space hyphenated with something. These guys are just flat space paladins.
Yeah, there's a simplicity to them in their complexity that is appealing.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good staple head for the Dark Angels. They're simple but complex, and their complexity makes them exciting.
Yes.
But I think that just about wraps up the Dark Angels and the Lionel Johnson, the first Primarch.
Yep. Tune in next week when we talk about Fulgrim, the bad touch Primarch.
Yes, the no touch me there, please. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that just about does it for this week's episode. We will see you next week.
Ave Imperator.
Ave Imperator.